Chris, welcome to Kicking Tables. Thanks so much for joining us to talk about the new Sentinels of the Multiverse coming out.
My genuine pleasure to be here.
So, this is a definitive edition of the game, but tell us, for those who have not played the game or who are unfamiliar with it, I don't know who those people would be, but let's give them an overview of what Sentinels is.
Sure, Sentinels of the Multiverse is a cooperative comic book card game in which 3 to 5 heroes fight against a dangerous villain in a dynamic environment. Each hero is played by a player, and on a hero's turn, they're going to play cards and use powers, working together to fight against a villain who is entirely too powerful for any hero to take on their own. But good news, through the powers of working together and friendship, you heroes can save the day and save, in fact, the entire multiverse.
What about love? You got to throw love in there too. Does it?
Sometimes love's there,
Okay.
but sometimes you've got that level of like animosity between heroes. We're like, well, I
That's
don't like you,
true.
but I respect you. But underneath that, you know, it's there.
Oh yeah,
It's love.
it's all love.
But that, you
It's
know what?
There's
They
still
all
love.
they also all figure out that their mothers are all named Martha, so then they work together.
That's
They work
right.
together.
It always
You're watching different movies than I am. Let's just put it that way.
so Sentinels is your own creation, though. Like, all the characters are your own creation. These are not based on any other
I
characters
mean,
out
they're
there.
based on the same archetypes that all great legends are. The same,
Sure.
hero's journey and Greek and Roman myths and American tall tales, everything, it's all the same. But yes, no, the Sentinel Comics is entirely my creation. Me and my co-creator Adam, who is the artist who's done all of the art for Sentinel Comics,
Nice.
and yeah, we've been working on it together since 2010.
Wow, that's a long journey.
It is, and that's part. And I mean, and that's the big why. Because the number one question we get is, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this definitive edition?
Yes.
Why start over now? You put the game out in 2011. Why in 2021 are you coming back? And I'm like, the exact question that you're asking is the answer to that question. We put this game out in 2011. We started telling these stories in 2010, and so in 2011, when we released this game, we knew everything there was to know about the world of Sentinel Comics.
Right.
And then since then, we've been telling stories nonstop about the world of Sentinel Comics. I have a spreadsheet that is open right here, and I'm looking at it all the time
Yeah.
because it is my life's work, literally, that has 86 years of comic book history in it, of every comic that came out every month, in all these different titles, and the creative teams and the storylines and all these things. It's all here. And that didn't exist in
Right.
2011. The stories did. These characters did. All of the stuff that we're basing all this on, all the places we're going with these stories did. But it was this journey of years, because we started doing this thing, and it was great, and it was fun, and it was successful, and people were into it. And the more people were into it, the more it became worth it for us to spend our time on it. We didn't realize how much. Like, when we started, we're like, we made this game, and it's for us to play, and we enjoy it. How nice. And then we turned it into a product, and we sold it. We're like, this is great. We have this little side project thing that definitely isn't a career, because we're making like fake comic book card games for people. Sure, we'll do that on the side. And here we are, a decade later. Greater Than Games has about 20 full-time employees. This is our career. And like I said, this is most likely my life's work. It is unlikely that I will ever make anything as enduring as Sentinels of the Multiverse, or at least the world of Sentinel Comics, because now we have multiple games in the world of Sentinels of the Multiverse. There's the Sentinel Comics role-playing game that we put out at the very beginning of the year. Last year, the company Arcane Wonders kickstarted a tabletop board game that will be coming out, I believe, later this year, called Freedom 5.
Okay.
There's video games, both the video game version of Sentinels of the Multiverse and also a video game that came out last year called Sentinels of Freedom that is on the Switch and several other things. But I have a video
Awesome.
game on the Nintendo Switch, and like,
Awesome.
right. So like the world of Sentinel Comics is huge, and the thing that started it all looks terrible. Now, let me rephrase. I don't think it looks terrible. I find the art of the original edition of Sentinels: The Multiverse charming. I like it. I think that Adam did great work, and I think it's very evocative of the stories we're trying to tell. But the person who needs to care the most about the art that we're putting out is the person who's drawing that art. Like I said, Adam has drawn everything ever for Sentinel comics. That's not true now. Now with the RPG out, we actually have a whole slew of artists that worked on that book. Adam did the cover and a ton of the interior illustrations, but a bunch of artists did as well, and that's been fun to work with them. But still, Adam is the artist whose art style informs the whole look and feel, the aesthetic of Sentinel comics. And Adam hates any of his art that he's done before 3 weeks ago, but actually more like especially the first 5 years of our company, he's like, this is garbage. It's terrible. I hate looking at it. And like I said, don't agree, but I do understand where he's coming from. When you take the original, I should have had a box of the core game here, of the original core game, so I can say, when you compare that, but I don't have one of those lying around. I do have this lying around. This is Sentinels: The Multiverse Definitive Edition, and everything about this is better than what we originally made. The art's better. The box is better. The component design is better. The text on all the cards is better. The layout of the cards is better. Everything about it is better. And Sentinels: The Multiverse is still a game that up until last year was selling very well. We stopped printing it. We stopped selling it knowing this was coming up. But up until even in 2020, the sales of Sentinels: The Multiverse, the core game, was up there as one of our top selling games. How can that be? It came out in 2011. And so the fact that there's new people, like you said, you don't know who these people are. There's tons of new people all the time coming to the world of Sentinels, and we felt like they deserved a better jumping on point.
Awesome.
So I want a true superhero, tradition. The origin story of this. How did this work for you guys? Were you guys just did the comic come first? Did the idea for the game came first? How did you guys come together with that sort of the origin story for your game?
Thing that came first was Adam and me as friends. Adam and I became friends. I am almost exactly a year older than him by 2 days. And so we have one day every year that we are the same age. One day he catches up to me and we're the same age, and we celebrate Same Age Day. We've celebrated Same Age Day for decades now. And then I leave him in the dust for another year. We've been friends since around when I turned 11, and very quickly, very early on, we were like, oh, we like making things together. We like telling stories together. We were terrible at it, but it didn't matter. As teenagers, we were unfettered by the need for quality. And that was a great boon to both of us in our creative processes, because we just made stuff, and then we made it for us, and we never showed it to anybody, and we loved it. And we told stories, and we made up comic books, and we took characters from TV shows and movies and comics that we liked and put them with other characters, and then we went, this is fine, but what if we made up our own stuff? And we made up stuff that was bad. It's the, you're gonna, I think that Adam says a lot about his art. He's like, you're gonna do thousands of, am I allowed to swear on the air here?
Doesn't matter. Go for it.
Okay, great.
He'll bleep it if he needs to.
Okay. He says that you're gonna do thousands of shitty drawings in your lifetime. So you might as well start now. Get those shitty drawings out of your systems. You're gonna do them, so that you can get past them. And that was what our teenage years was so much bad, ill-advised art and stories that gave us a ground point. The thing we got out of that wasn't the stories we told; it was the working together. It was the collaborative storytelling. Adam has been one of my good friends for so long, but even more importantly than the friendship that we have is the collaborative, the cooperative creation that we do. It is the enduring element of our relationship. And so we started doing that stuff decades ago, and then he moved to we were both living in Kansas City for a while, and then he moved to LA, and then I went to Chicago, and then I came back from Chicago. I was in Kansas City, and Adam came back into town for a friend's wedding, and so he was at a friend's wedding, and he and I once in a while caught up via text or something. We didn't hang out as much as we could because we were in different places. And he was like, hey, I'm in town for my friend's wedding. Are you around? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, I've got a flight first thing in the morning. Can you take me to the airport? I'm like, wow, man, thanks. That's what you. After all this
The
time, that's
airport
what you reach
trip.
out for. But actually, what we did is we're like, okay, well, let's go. Got done with the wedding at like 8 p.m. And so we went and hung out at an overnight 24-hour IHOP from 8 p.m. until 6 a.m. when I was going to take him to the airport. And we made this game. Like we were just talking, we're like, oh, you know, it'd be fun is to have a tabletop game. And I'd always like tweaked games and worked on games, and we played games together. It's like it'd be fun to have like this cooperative game that felt like being superheroes in a comic book.
Mm-hmm.
And we started. We had this idea, and then it just like happened. It just like bleh, came out of us, and we wrote it in this night. In this one night, we wrote what became Sentinels: The Multiverse.
Wow.
And Adam had his flight we were supposed to leave the IHOP at 6 a.m. to get to an airport on time. And as soon as the airport opened around like 4 a.m., we called and pushed his flight back 12 hours.
Oh, wow.
It was $60 to move his flight back 12 hours. We're like, done, no problem. We're just going to stay here all day and just keep working on this. And so sleep deprived and just brimming with all these feelings, we made this thing. And it worked. It just worked. And then he went back to LA, and I went back to my teaching job, and the two of us like every night would get on a Skype call and just and like look at things and talk about things, and it was this bizarre thing that and that was August of 2010.
Okay.
And we released Sentinels: The Multiverse August of 2011.
Wow.
So between August of 2010, we had that idea that one night. We started writing it. By the end of the year, all of the words were written and half of the art was done. We incorporated Greater Than Games January 27th, 2011, because this thing I'm not telling is later that fall. I'm hanging out with my good friend Paul, and I'm like, Paul, let me tell you about this weird thing that my friend Adam and I are making. And I told him about this game, and he goes, that sounds like a really cool game. You should like try to sell that to somebody. I'm like, oh no. No, I would never. I don't know why. I don't know what I would do with it, but I know it's mine. Like I know that it's the thing that we've created, and I can't. No one else would do it right. Like ever, it's ours or it's not a thing. And he's like, well, what if you made a company and sold it yourself? I'm like, we had no intention of making this as a product. It was just a thing for us. But Paul had some really good points about like, no, the thing that you're making is good, and it has like just without him even having played the game, just me telling him about it, he's like, this sounds amazing. And then when he played the game, he's like, no, you definitely should do this. I'm like, well, how would we even start a company? He's like, well, you do this and this. I've started a couple of companies. It's like that. And I'm like,
So this is what started. This is not just the origin story for Sentinels, but for Greater Than Games as well.
yes,
This is
because
where
then,
you started completely.
right, Greater Than Games is me, Adam, and Paul, because we're like, I don't know if I start a company. Paul, like, well, what if I do it? And next thing we know, we're all embroiled in this thing. January 27th, 2011, we incorporate Greater Than Games.
Nice.
We figure out, like, okay, I guess we got to be at Gen Con. And so we're going to get a Gen Con booth. We got a Gen Con booth. We went to interested outside investment parties and looked for somebody who was willing to give us money, because we didn't have a Kickstarter or anything. Like that wasn't at that time really even so much a thing.
Right.
We got from interested investors, we got $50,000, and $50,000 got us a Gen Con booth. It printed the game, and it rented a truck for us to drive the copies of the game from where we were in St. Louis to Indianapolis for Gen Con. If we didn't sell any games at Gen Con, we wouldn't have enough money to gas up the truck to drive it back.
Wow.
Like, because we had to get hotel rooms, and like we weren't, that $50,000 didn't just get us that. We were also pretty out of pocket at that point. $50,000 we needed for printing and like getting the Gen Con booth, but like hotel rooms and the truck and everything. But we were threadbare. And then at that first Gen Con, we're in this tiny little 10 by 10 in the back of the hall. Nobody knows who we are. People are walking by. We brand the booth Sentinels: The Multiverse. We're like, nobody cares about Greater Than Games. If this is a success, then Greater Than Games can make its own name. Sentinels: The Multiverse is the name people need to see. We brand the booth Sentinels: The Multiverse, and it's Adam and me and Paul standing around some tables with one banner that we printed out at a Kinko's, and we're like, hey, we've got this game. It's a superhero game. Come sit and play this game. And like we get real good at the people walking by, pitching at them as fast as possible. Like, come sit and play. And by midday Thursday, first day of Gen Con, midday Thursday, we have a line that runs the length of the back of the hall.
Wow.
We've got people at Gen Con being like, you guys have to manage your line. I'm like, I don't know how to manage anything. Like, I've never been to a Gen Con, and now you're telling me after the first day that I need to do a better job managing a line. I didn't realize that line was for us. We're just trying to run these games as fast as we can.
Right.
It was great. It was great. Tom Bassel called us the #1 game of Gen Con 2011.
That is
Wow.
awesome. So fast forward 10 years to now, and Sentinels of the Multiverse, the definitive edition. Is this something that the hardcore fans are still want to get their hands on? Like, how have you changed anything in it? Do you consider this a reboot? What all of those questions.
Right, yeah. So Sentinels of Multiverse exists because, like we said, the art needs to be updated. But it's not just the art. It is every part of the game. Every little thing got looked at. And it's because we started with the art. We started and said, okay, hold on. Let's redo the art. But we don't want to get into a position where we're like every 10 years redoing the art, because Adam's art grows by leaps and bounds every 10 years. I mean, he's doing art 40 hours a week, plus 40 plus hours a week for 10 years. His art's going to get better.
Sure,
a lot
of
better.
course.
Yeah.
And so we sat down and we started looking at this. And we're like, oh, look at all these cards. This could get better. This could be. What if we change this? What if we? Well, really, the card that broke us, the card that broke the floodgates on all of this, was in Legacy's deck. He has a card called Danger Sense, and on the card Danger Sense, Legacy's like flinching away from some fire, as if he just narrowly avoided being scorched. And we're like, well, this story. We know what story this is from, and it's from the Golden Age. It's from Justice Comics number 98, and that means that it's not Legacy. It means it's his father, that it's actually the older Legacy, the Legacy that fought in World War II and that wears the helmet, not the Legacy who is the one in the card game. That's okay. We can put him on a card, and we're like, oh, that's the thing. We don't need to just go through and update all the arts and all the stories. We need to update things to be actually representative of this giant spreadsheet of all of the comics that I have. Okay, great. And so the card Danger Sense, the art on it, this is not going to show up great in video, but at least a little bit. The art on Danger Sense, oh, come on, focus. I'll hide my face so it can't see me.
There you go.
Is of this Golden Age legacy. The art
Nice.
style is done in this 1940s style. And that art in the deck goes alongside the card Heroic Interception, which is an art from 1991, and the art style matches the 1991 art style of the era. And then you even have some more like the more modern era art that happens. This is a throwback comic, but it's a throwback comic that happens in 2012, I want to say off the top of my head. And so the glare from the light's not doing any favors. But so you've got a bunch of different arts of different eras that show up in these cards. And so we're not going to run into an issue of this art all needs to be redone as Adam gets to be a better artist, because he didn't just draw these in the style of. He used like the tools and methods of artists from that era, of finding
That's
like what the
awesome.
color palettes are. The character Ra is the alias of Dr. Blake Washington Jr. Well, Dr. Blake Washington Jr. is a guy with brown hair. We know that in the story he has brown hair, and yet the first time he shows up in the very early Silver Age, he's got blonde hair, and it's weird that he has blonde hair. Well, it's because the color palettes. You don't have anybody with brown hair in that era. Like if you think about characters that have brown hair, it's actually striped red and black hair because
Right.
that's the colors you have, and people's hair looks real weird in that era. And so we just did so much research into all of the different aspects of how to make things match the stories that we're telling. I could tell you about like each of these comic books these kind of come from these different eras. They're impacted by the real world events that happened in those years. Let's let that bleed through into the game. So the game is representing that. One of the things that's cool about the cover of the game, the cover of the box has like modern era sort of art on it. But each of the box sides has a different decade of art showing just how many different art styles exist.
Oh, that's awesome.
That is
in
really
this
cool.
one thing.
All right, I've got to ask, how many characters did you guys include in the definitive edition? And I need to know which one is your favorite.
Oh boy. Okay, I will answer that question.
Choose your favorite child.
That's the favorites. I'm terrible at favorites because these are all my babies. But so to I'm terrible at summing things up. Obviously, I have so much to say. But yes, we changed everything. It's not just the look of the cards; it's the mechanics on the cards. Some characters like Bunker and Tempest changed almost entirely. Some characters like Legacy and Argent Adept are very recognizable to who they were before. Everybody's recognizable as the same characters, but the stories are more ingrained in their mechanics, and their mechanics work even more seamlessly with the person that we know them to be. There are in this core game, in the original core game of Sentinels of the Multiverse, there's 10 heroes, 4 villains, 4 environments.
Okay.
In this core game, there's 12 heroes, 6 villains, and 6 environments. And it's not just us in the terms of the heroes. It's not us just taking the same roster of 10 and adding 2 more. It's looking at it and looking at all the products we want to make for Definitive Edition, which is, by the way, a very limited number.
Okay.
With Sentinels and Multiverse before, there was the core game, but then there was mini expansions, and there was bigger expansions, and then there was even bigger expansions, and then there was some smaller things, and then there was additional promo cards that you could get just at conventions. No, terrible. This is Definitive Edition is 6 boxes that we're going to put out over the next 6 years,
Okay.
and those boxes have everything in it. This game has the heroes, the villains, environments. It also has variant cards right in it, and everything is collected in these big boxes. In this game, 12 heroes, and the 12 heroes are built very specifically for this. You've got the Freedom 5. You've got Legacy, Bunker, Wraith, Tachyon, and Absolute Zero, your core flagship team of the Freedom 5 right here in this game.
Okay.
They have an intern/sidekick in the pages of Sentinel Comics, and that's Unity. Unity was previously one of the single deck mini expansion standalone characters. She's in the core game because where you have the Freedom 5, Unity goes there as well.
Okay.
So that's half of the box. The other half of the box is another hero team, and that hero team is the Prime Wardens. So you have Argent Adept, Fnatic, Haka, Tempest, and Captain Cosmic are the other team, and that means that like characters like Argent Adept and Captain Cosmic were definitely not in the core game before, but yet here they are now. And a frequent ally of the Prime Wardens, not a person on the team, but someone who is allied with many of the members of the Prime Wardens, is Ra, the God of the Sun. And so he's also in the box. And so those are the 12 heroes. 2 hero teams, the Prime Wardens of the Freedom 5, and 2 individual heroes that go with those teams.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Now, and your favorite?
Okay. I don't have a favorite. They're all my babies. My favorite in terms of the new mechanical work that went into it is actually probably Haka. I love all of them, but Haka has some really cool new effects that we put into him to make him feel even more like himself. In terms of the art, I think Adam really, I mean with everybody, but I think Adam really knocked it out of the park with Tempest art. There's some super, super cool new Tempest art pieces. And they're not all just modern pieces. Some of them, like you've got this classic looking chain lightning art. Oh my gosh, This is terrible. But
There
like it's very dynamic. I love one of these very modern ones. I'll save that one for last. There's a brand new card in the deck. Actually, a lot of these decks have new cards in them. A new card in the deck that is his sword, the sword that Tempest carries, and I love the art on that sword. Come on, focus. There we go. Kinda.
Very nice.
That's a
but-
nice card, yeah.
My favorite one is this super modern one he did for the card Thunderclap, which is also a new card. And come on, focus.
Ooh. Very nice.
That's some nice art on there.
Yeah, he's got like the tiny little Tempest stuff in the corner, and this like tank that he's blowing up, but it's got the crack-a-thoom, and the sound effect is actually like built into. I love it. I love it.
Awesome. Now, can you still mix this with the original game, or is it meant to stand alone?
It is meant to stand alone, and yet
Okay.
we know that. So, like everything ever that was part of Sentinels: The Multiverse over the course of this journey of us making Sentinels: The Multiverse will be in Definitive Edition in these products over the years that we're making. However, if you're like, guys, my favorite character is Skyscraper. Skyscraper is my absolute favorite character, and you're telling me that the hero Skyscraper isn't going to be usable for at least two or 3 years? Like, what? I want to play her now. Good news. We are putting out a conversion guide that is just a simple 2-page PDF that's like, okay, you want to play non-definitive stuff alongside definitive stuff? Here's what you do. You treat these effects like this. You do this like that. There you go. If you take your original edition Skyscraper and you play with the conversion guide, I'm going to tell you, she's not going to be as streamlined. She's not going to be as cool as the definitive edition Skyscraper that we eventually release. But she'll work.
Okay.
It'll work.
Okay.
And that's especially important because, like I said, we're going to make Skyscraper. We're going to make all these characters. But
We're
we're
all
not
gonna
going to make
it.
We're not going to make the content that fans have made. One of the things that I love that is true, there's 2 things that fans do that blow me away. I love people playing these games. I love people interacting with these games. I love people like getting into these stories and telling their own stories in these worlds. But the 2 things that are make me really feel like I've made it is people making fan content, people making their own heroes and villains and environments. Like that's so cool. That I mean, I've done that. One of the first things I ever messed with was like, nah, that's not the first thing. One of the things I messed with early on in my teenage years was making scenarios for Arkham Horror. I'm like, okay,
Oh,
Arkham Horror is
nice.
this game. I love Arkham Horror, but I'm going to write a bunch of scenarios where you set it up in this way, and then these things unfold, and like these mysteries happen. Like, I loved playing in that world, and I'm sure the game design work that I did there was subpar at best, but it doesn't matter. I had fun doing it, and that was a way that I creatively engaged in that. So the fact that people are creatively engaging with this game is mind-blowing and thrilling to me. The other thing that people do that I love is cosplay. When we go to
Oh,
conventions and I see gaggles, I see scores of people in really well done Sentinels costumes acting like the characters. That's just like, like
Yeah, you know you've done something people love when they dress up as it, you know?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And then the people, oh my gosh, this one time, my favorite cosplay story. There was this little girl at a convention. She had to be, I'm terrible at knowing the age of children. She was somewhere between the age of 6 and 16.
Perfect. That's
most children are between those ages.
Yeah.
Right. She could talk and walk, but she wasn't an adult. But
She was 9, by the way. 9 is how old that is.
Okay, all right.
good.
But she was dressed up as Unity. She had this great Unity costume. She had the goggles and the bandana. She had a little tool belt. And when I was like, oh my gosh, like I saw her and like we were walking down a hall. We had to go somewhere quick, and I see this girl, and I do the double take. I'm like, oh, and like she immediately knows that she's been recognized, and she opens up her tool belt, and she's got like these little things in her tool belt of like these are robot pieces, and it's like, oh, amazing. And one of the things she pulls out of her bag is this really well crafted, like made out of like that like Play-Doh type putty that then you can harden and it stays permanent.
Oh, yes.
She made this really fantastic Bebot. The Bebot card from the thing. She made the little Bebot look just like the card. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I walk up and I look at her and she's there with her mom. I'm like, this is amazing. She shows me the Bebot. Like she knows who I am, so that was nice. I didn't have to be like, "Hi, I'm some weirdo who's really into what you're doing," but no, like, she knew who I was. But I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And she shows me the Bebot, and I look at it, and I go out on a limb, and I look at her and I go, "You know that?" She goes, "This is Bebot." I'm like, "Well, you know, it really looks more like a Hornet," and that's the flavor text on the card. On the flavor text of Bebot is Unity's boss and mentor Tachyon saying it really looks more like a Hornet, and but when I say this, the girl's mom is like, oh, she's like, no, my child worked so hard on this, and now this guy is criticizing her creation. But so the girl's mom like clearly like steps forward to like say, oh, it's okay, honey, and the girl like shushes her mom. He's like, shh, he's doing a thing, and she turns and she goes, Bebot is more fun to say, which is the next line on the flavor text card. So like we had our little secret handshake of that was such a beautiful moment that it still gives me chills thinking about it, because like that was such an amazing moment for me and for her of just like we connected at the same level on our love of this thing.
That is awesome. That is
Anyway.
awesome. So Sentinels of the Multiverse Definitive Edition hits Kickstarter on March 30th. And it sounds like this is the perfect jumping on point for those who haven't gotten into it, like myself. This is a game I've always wanted to play, but I don't have it. So, like, I'm like, okay, this is awesome. Perfect place for me to jump in. But just before we let you go, Chris, give us the elevator pitch. Why should we back the Definitive Edition of Sentinels?
Absolutely. Because the Kickstarter is the most straightforward Kickstarter you've ever seen. It has 2 pledge levels, the core game and the core game with all the sleeves you need. There's no stretch goals. There's no marketing gimmicks. If you back the Kickstarter, you get the game a little bit cheaper. You get it faster than anybody else. You'll get it first. And you'll get a bunch of foil cards, foil versions of each of the hero and villain character cards. But the point of this Kickstarter is not to show you that we can run a really successfully marketed Kickstarter. We're intentionally not doing a lot of the sort of things that people do to make their Kickstarters explode. I don't anticipate this Kickstarter being a $2 million Kickstarter, nor do I want it to be. I want this Kickstarter to show us how many people actually want this game for the content of the game. And if you look at the Kickstarter main page, it says, hey, here's what's in this game. Here's the work that we've done. Here's the why, here's the how, and here's the what.
Right.
And if that's persuasive to you, if you're like, oh, I love Sentinels of the Multiverse and I don't want any new stuff, it's already done, great, then don't get it. I'm not going to break into your house and steal it. If you want the new stuff, it's there. If you've never played, there's the 2 people that I'm really trying to get with this. Besides, there's the people that are the mega fans that know they want this. Great, I desperately want them to get this. But there's the 2 people that I really want to get it. It's people like you who have heard about it, but have never played it before, have never gotten it, and they want a jumping on point. There's also people who have played it and decided it wasn't for them. It was too
Okay.
fiddly, or didn't like the art. I didn't really like the way that I had to track all these different things. The component design didn't feel quite right to me. Just not what I wanted. Check it out. Give it a shot, because this is a better incarnation of that thing. If you think you don't want a cooperative superhero game, you're probably right. I'm not going to try to convince you of that. But if the idea of a cooperative superhero game seems fun, thrilling, cool to you,
Yeah.
and you haven't given the definitive edition a shot, give it a shot. And we're so confident that you'll like it that we, on our Kickstarter, have a money-back guarantee that if you get it from us, you buy it, you open it up, you play it, and you decide, you know what, this still isn't for me, within 90 days, we'll send out an update that, okay, it's fully fulfilled. You now have within 90 days to return it. You send it back to us. We'll pay you back. We refund you entirely and pay you back for the shipping as well.
Wow.
Like, no, the best advertisement for Definitive Edition is Definitive Edition. And if you sit, play it, and honestly say, no, I don't like this, great, send it back to us.
Wow, that's fantastic. March 30th, everybody go check it out. Sentinels of the Multiverse Definitive Edition, 10 years in the making. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. It's been awesome talking to you.
My genuine pleasure. Thank you so much. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget, Kickstarter for Sentinels of the Multiverse Definitive Edition is live from March 30th to April 23rd, something like that. So go check that out. And perhaps even more importantly, if you're a real hero, you'll be sure to like and subscribe. There's a button somewhere around here, and you should smash it or pulverize it or whatever it is that people do to buttons these days. But OMG Nexus, add it to your watching list.